We have to hope that we are soon to surface from this year of cancellation, chaos, and constant anxiety. Coaches love to say every setback is an opportunity for growth. If they're right, sports is primed for a quantum leap. It's Player's Own Voice in studio. I'm Signa Butler.
And I'm Anastasia Busis. Quantum leap might be a little bit optimistic for me, but we have seen some massive changes in the way we consider sport and maybe more importantly, how athletes see themselves in the wider world.
Progress has been made. 2021, there is going to be some great things to come.
And we've got two great guests to talk about it. Erica Wiebe is the reigning Olympic champion in 75 kilograms freestyle. On and off the mat, she's a born leader. She was loud and proud in support of Canada, pressing pause on the Tokyo Olympics. And now Erica Wiebe is calling for athletes to hang back in the queue for vaccination.
Like her many family members in the CFL, NFL, NHL, and WNBA, Sarah Nurse has made her mark in every championship she's played. As a 16-year-old, she broke the provincial Women's Hockey League record for most goals in a season. As an Olympic rookie, she helped the national team win silver in 2018. She joined the PWHPA board this past summer, where she advocates for diversity and inclusion on many fronts. She's also immortalized in plastic. Yes, Sarah Nurse is one of two hockey Barbies made in the Meaningful Role Model series.
It has been a wild 12 months. So to the best of your ability, we've seen a few trends. What do you think has been a flash in the pan, and what do you think is here to stay? Sarah, let's start with you.
I think obviously in the last few months, we've seen a lot of togetherness and community and coming together. And we've had the opportunity to pay attention to a lot of things that aren't usually paid attention to. And so obviously at the beginning, we were thanking our frontline workers and the incredible work and sacrifice that they do. And we're coming together for them. And then with different instances of social justice, we've seen a lot of activism and things come about from that, and harder conversations being had, and really change being looked forward to. And so I think in the last few months, that's been the trend.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, as games around the world were put on pause, athletes were still having increasing relevance on, just like Sarah said, on speaking out against social justice issues, on using their platforms to have those really tough conversations. And on a personal level for me, it's just been difficult to understand, where do I fit in this landscape?
Certainly we've seen some progress in women's sports as well. Viewership, through the roof for the NWSL, Professional Soccer League in North America, WNBA, women getting hired into all these leadership positions and maybe non-traditional leadership positions as well. At what point do you celebrate change and progress? And what point do you push for more? Erica.
I mean, the history of women's sport is a history lesson in resiliency, right? And I look forward to the day when we're not talking about the first time that there's two women referees in refereeing an NBA game. I look forward to the first time that it's not surprising that we have women's soccer being shown on television, or we're not struggling to find the WNBA games live on television. I think the sport media landscape is still dominated by men's professional sports.
How about you, Sarah?
I definitely agree. I think I can't wait for the day that women in sports isn't a novelty anymore, that it's just a little bit of normalcy. And I mean, this past summer, especially with the WNBA and the NWSL, it not only showed the passion for those women in the sport, but it also showed the visibility and the investment that was being made towards women, because that's something that we really never seen before. And the fact that, again, we were all kind of at home and able to watch and see, we got to see the incredible product and how hard working these women are and how determined they are. And I think that when people bet on women's sports, when people invest in women, good things come. And so I'm excited for the future of all women's sports, really.
I'm going to put you both on the spot individually, of course. What's the largest positive that you've seen in your own sport in the past year? And let's flip it around. Sarah, you go first.
Oh boy, the largest positive. I think for us, we've unfortunately not been able to play since COVID has begun. But for us, I think we've been able to have a lot of conversations and address a lot of blind spots when it comes to race in hockey and the racism in our sport. And I think that's been very important because our sport has been typically a very white, male dominated sport for a very long time. It continues to be to this day. As we look to the future of our sport, and the future is changing. I had a little Zoom call with a bunch of girls who had immigrated from the Middle East, and they actually were playing hockey. And I was like, this is incredible because you're changing the face of the sport right now. Like, this is the future of our sport. And so it was pretty special to see.
Yeah, when I think about the most positive impact that this pause in sport has had on the sport of wrestling globally. Wrestling is definitely the antithesis of social distancing, but we've seen an opportunity to continue that investment and that showcase of women in the sport of wrestling globally.
Erica, you're training for Tokyo 2020. In an ideal world, what does the next 6 months look like for you?
Olympic year is typically a time when you kind of are really focused and really intentional around the opportunities that you get, around the people that you're seeking out to compete against, to prepare for that one day of competition at an Olympic Games. So needless to say, I think over the next couple of months, it's going to be less than ideal conditions, but the whole sport of wrestling, I think the whole sport in general, is built around finding a way to win. And so it's definitely an unprecedented challenge, and I'm ready up for the task.
Unprecedented is like the buzzword of 2020, 2021, which is also difficult to say. Sarah, Women's World Championships just a few months away. Of course, Beijing is on the horizon. What is the report card on women's hockey right now?
I think with women's hockey, we've kind of had to be adaptable in the last few years just with our current situation and our lack of professional league. And so we've kind of had to adapt and really get creative with how we do things. And so this year has been, another one of those challenges for us. But as we look forward to the World Championships and then Beijing, we're looking forward with optimism because anytime we get to compete, anytime we get to represent Team Canada is such an honor and something that excites all of us. And so as we look forward to those two events, we take it day by day. And we're really working together as a team to be the best possible team that we can be.
How are you working together as a team? Is it just all Zoom meetings or what does that look like?
Virtually. Yes, we're virtually working together as a team, which is awesome because we've actually been able to connect probably more this year than any year in the past. And, we have our small little training groups in our regions, but we are staying very, very connected, which has been reassuring because it's nice knowing that, one of my teammates out in Calgary is putting in the work just like I am.
As the only one of the four people in this conversation that has not been to an Olympics, I'm okay with saying that. These Olympic Games for both of you guys are going to look probably a lot different. Even if we had a crystal ball, maybe not the festive concert atmosphere. Maybe there's going to be a bubble in the Olympics. Maybe there's going to be no fans. How much does that take away from your Olympic experience if it ends up being that way, Erica?
Well, going back to that visibility for women's sport, in Rio, I actually didn't have that many fans in my stadium. And so one of the things I was thinking about was actually in a Tokyo Olympic Games, women's wrestling in particular is a marquee sport. So I was mentally preparing for having to compete with thousands of fans. And so that potentially will be very, very different. But I think as an athlete, you focus in on what you're doing. I don't remember the crowd as I was stepping out onto mats for that gold medal match in Rio. I remember the feeling in my body, kind of the taste, the saltiness on my lips, and none of the distractions that we're experiencing as athletes, none of those really, can seep into the preparations and the competition in that moment.
That's a champion's mindset for sure. I think as high performance athletes, we kind of have to have that intrinsic motivation. And, there are going to be so many supporters. I know we were in Korea and I felt all of the love from our entire country. And so again, we get to compete on behalf of Team Canada. We know we have so much love and support coming from back home. And so we're going to do it to the best of our ability and hopefully come home with gold medals.
What about pin trading? You think that's just going to go the way of the dodo without any audience, or what are your projections there?
not. That was like low key a super fun thing to do.
Yeah, you get obsessed with these pins. We've been in this pandemic for almost a year. Do you think that this pandemic has entrenched further discrepancies, or is it a great equalizer? Erica?
I like to be optimistic. I believe in the transformative power of sport. But I think right now we're seeing a huge disparity in the ability for athletes to train and prepare at all levels in all sports across the globe. It's really difficult. I was competing in Serbia in December, and just psychologically, the differences in the restrictions and the protocols that we face as Canadians, which I 100% believe in, and I think are very important to the safety of our communities, they're not being followed around the world. And it's tough to go into an environment where you don't feel safe. You've made the decision, you've taken the risks, but what they said they're going to do, they weren't doing. And, other athletes are being prioritized in different countries. They're having access to things. There's lots of concerns around the ability to train and prepare, the ability to sustain clean sport around the world. And so I think that will be interesting to see how things shake out in Tokyo and Beijing.
Sarah?
I think that's such an important perspective, because I know a lot of us, we haven't been able to travel internationally, like we haven't been competing. And so I think having that perspective is so incredibly cool, because it's like we have all these health and safety guidelines that we need to abide by for our health and safety. And if they're not being followed, or they're very different throughout the world, like that creates a lot of discrepancies between athletes and how they're able to prepare for the Olympic Games, which is one of the biggest stages in the entire world. And so that, I think it's definitely a little concerning, but going into Tokyo and going into Beijing, I'm hoping that we can kind of have a plan moving into that, because I think it's very important for the safety and health of everybody.
We've heard a lot of talk from economists, especially about the recession or the she-cession among women, choosing between careers and family, in the workforce. What has been your experience like in sports?
In most sports, I know I can't speak for all sports, but most sports that I've seen, there definitely is that kind of discrepancy. But that's something that's so important about an Olympic Games, and so something so interesting is the fact that when you get to an Olympic Games, they don't care if you're male or female. You're an Olympic athlete at that point. Everybody's cheering for you. But outside of that, I think is very different. And I look at my teammates. We have a lot of wives, we have a few mothers, and the way that they've been able to handle their situations and their children's and their families with grace and professionalism has been so inspiring, and I think needs to be highlighted more.
Yeah, it's interesting when you think about the impact of the pandemic on women across industries. I'm privileged into being in an Olympic sport, not part of the big three of professional sports. And, a lot of that funding that for my support comes from On the Podium, comes from Sport Canada, which is targeted. And the women's wrestling in Canada has a huge legacy of Olympic performance. And so in the sport of wrestling, women are actually privileged, and women are actually given more support and opportunities than the men. And so it's an interesting dynamic and shift to what we traditionally see in football, in soccer, in baseball, basketball, where you have way more visibility for men's sports, way more opportunities. And so again, for me, I think just being visible, being a role model for young girls, because I'm really concerned about the next generation of female athletes, about their social media, what they're seeing, what they're hearing, what they're feeling, and what they're not being able to do and experience with their bodies right now, because sport is effectively shut down right now in Canada at the domestic grassroots level. And so, for me, I think that's going to be the biggest gap. And the 2021 Olympic team and the 2022 Beijing teams, we're so well supported, and it's tough, but we're going to do it. But the next generation, I think that's what, really keeps me up at night.
For young women in Canada who might be struggling right now, not being able to do those things, do you guys have any advice for them? And I'll start with you, Erica.
Yeah, there's a lot of research that one of the key fundamental aspects of keeping girls in sport is that community, is that friendship component. And I was incredibly fortunate to have amazing teammates throughout my youth, and especially powerful role models that were women. You know, my first wrestling coach was a young woman. I had many female soccer coaches. And so that visibility, those role models, made me never once question my place on the field of play, whether that was a soccer field or a wrestling mat, anywhere. And so for girls right now that they might not have access to their coaches or their teammates, obviously there's lots of virtual tools to stay connected, but I think that, you know, just get out the door, stay active, find a new challenge, and, you know, seek that experience of the joy of pushing yourself beyond what you're capable of.
I totally love that, because I think with this current situation now, I would just encourage everybody to get creative. I know I coach a U21 girls team here at the Stony Creek Sabres. And so we're on weekly Zoom calls. This week it's Would You Rather. So we're going around the room talking about Would You Rather. And the girls are amazing. With our Team Canada team, we did a 4-week baking challenge to stay connected, and I ended up coming in 5th. Everybody, I know you wanted to know, but so we did a baking challenge to stay connected. Every week had a different theme, and you know, it's not even being kind of related to sport, but it's just staying connected with the people that you care about and the people that you want to be around. I think in terms of training and staying active, again, that creativity piece is huge. Like I was doing Zumba the other night. Like I don't do Zumba ever, but hey, I was just trying to stay a little bit active. And so, yeah, it's just finding different, fun, new, creative ways to keep yourself engaged.
The only Zumba course I've ever done made me question everything I've ever achieved in my life. It was so bad. What has training looked like for you both this year, and what have been some of those creative workarounds? Erica?
You know, in wrestling, we're really lucky. You literally, all you need is a pair of wrestling boots and a wrestling mat. And early on in the summer of 2020, we didn't even have access to a wrestling mat. And so we spent probably 3 or 4 months wrestling on a grass field that we had access to. The first 2 or 3 months was just wrestling, but yourself. And so we were just in our wrestling stance, moving around, trying to keep those kind of motor patterns engaged. And then by the end of the summer, so the restrictions lifted. We had a smaller bubble. We were able to touch each other. And so we started wrestling on the beginning, a very sloppy, wet grass field. And then by the end of the summer, it was like a concrete, dry piece of dirt. So, you know, it was a privilege to prepare things like that. Right now, I was able to get some fitness equipment. So I have a very small modified gym in my basement. And I also got a little like 10 by 10 wrestling mat to also put in my basement to just do some extra things on my own. And if I have to go away and come back in quarantine, I can keep that mat awareness. It is a privilege to do what we do, but it has been challenging.
Sarah?
The glamorous life of Olympic athletes, for sure. Yeah, I mean, this year has been very interesting. I started out on the rollerblades just to keep that skating mechanics down, because I mean, it's funny, the last couple of days in the GTA, it's been pretty cold, but besides that, it hasn't been. So like, I haven't even had access to an outdoor rink or anything. So just doing little things every day to keep myself engaged, really. Like as a hockey player, you stick handle, you shoot. I don't have access to an ice, so I unfortunately can't skate, but there are different mechanics that you can work on. I do skating simulations, for example. And so I think just doing little things and really remembering that you can only control what you can control. And if I don't have access to a rink because of health and safety guidelines, I can't get stressed out about that because it's not in my control. And so I've been very focused on that.
Love all the creativity. I love the workarounds. It's one thing for me to sit around and eat ketchup chips and, do the odd workout in my basement, but you guys are like at the pinnacle. So how have you stayed motivated? Who's helped you stay motivated? Just curious how you've gotten through this time. Sarah, let's start with you.
I think the motivation, one, it definitely has to come from you internally. Like you have to be motivated to stay at the top because obviously a lot of us have achieved greatness and high achievement. And so I've reached the top. I want to stay there. And so that's kind of my motivation. And again, as I mentioned, knowing that my teammates in Calgary and Montreal are working just as hard as I am reassures me and makes me excited. It makes me want to work harder so that when we do get back together, we're going to be a fantastic team. And we didn't, waste this last year. We put it to good use. And I think I have a ton of support, again, from my teammates, my family. But I think that drive to be at the top and also knowing that we have, again, the privilege and we're very fortunate that young girls are looking up to us, the younger generation. And they're like, well, what should we do during this time? And it's like, well, let me tell you, let me help you out. And so I definitely love that because then, we can provide some guidance as well.
It's been really interesting to spend the last 9 months just having this huge block of being able to develop some technical and tactical skills that when you have a competition every 3-4 weeks, you're not really able to develop. And so it's been an amazing gift to have this time. And I think you'll see a better, different, more dangerous Erica when the time comes.
Ooh. How long did it take you, though, Erica, to feel like the wind was back in your sails after the postponement of Tokyo?
I had literally qualified for the Olympic Games on March 13th, and then the IOC chose to postpone the games like 3 days later. And it was like, oh. But right away, it's like, these are the cards that have been dealt. All right, let's go. And I never thought overcoming a global pandemic would be part of my Olympic journey, but damn, it's a good story.
So through this year, though, what leadership lessons, because both of you are leaders on your respective teams, what have you learned about yourself that you're going to bring into your leadership roles? Sarah?
That's interesting. I think, us as a part of a team sport, we're used to captains and assistants and those kind of being our leaders. But as we kind of go through, as I've gone through this last year, I firmly believe that anybody has the capability of being a leader, whether that's through your actions, through your words, through how you make others feel. And so my key takeaway about leadership this year is anybody has the ability to be a leader. And I think that it's so incredible and it's such a strength and it's something that really empowers people. And so this year for myself, I've been able to use my platform and use my voice a little bit more and speak up on things that I've never spoken up about before because I feel that they're important. And I just want to bring light to things like that.
Anyone who knows me in the training environment is like, I am focused, I am intense, I am driven, and maybe kind of tough to be around sometimes. I know I seem really nice, but and so for me is, I'm learning to, go into these environments with compassion and with empathy. And I think that, a true leader is someone who truly shows you that they care. You earn the right to lead by supporting someone first. And I've experienced that firsthand with the leaders in my life. And that's something that I'm always trying to embody every single day.
It certainly feels like the world is making a sincere effort to push diversity and inclusion. We're having these conversations, Sarah mentioned it, that we've never had before within our groups with the decisions that we make. How are your sports doing in that category? And Sarah, I'll go to you just because you just touched on that.
Yeah, I think it's been proven that diverse groups of individuals are more successful. And you have to understand, like when you have a diverse group of individuals, you have a bunch of sets of experiences, opinions, and knowledge that you get to pull from. As only one person, or if I'm in a group of 10 Sarahs, we only have one opinion, one experience, right? And so as I look in the hockey world, there's been a huge push for diversity, gender equality, racial equality. There's also a huge call for disable and ableism, right? Because, there are underrepresented groups in the hockey world. And I think that is finally being realized and really pushed to the forefront. So I've been able to be in different conversations with different organizations and sports leagues about pushing forward for, equality in our sport. And I know that we're probably very much behind in respects to other sports and other sports leagues, but you have to start somewhere. We have to start turning the dial, and I think that the hockey world is starting to do that.
Yeah, from a global level, I think, wrestling again is very well represented across all 5 continents, in every corner of the world. There's a reason it's the world's oldest, greatest sport. I'm really concerned around, as we come out of this recession or we come out of the pandemic, will those opportunities, will those structural opportunities and structural inequalities still be present, and how can we dismantle those that are currently in the system?
One of the trends that emerged, of course, from 2020 was the athlete activist. What can athletes do to ensure that they do not take their foot off the gas? Sarah?
We all have a platform, whether you have 100 followers, whether you have 100,000 followers. Like, we all have a voice, and we all have the ability to make change. Because, I may not have the reaches of somebody bigger than me, but I have the ability to impact somebody's life. And I think that we all need to take that as a privilege. And as we go forward as athlete activists, we definitely have the ability to make a change.
I think that, continuing to push the people in power that have the power to change the landscape, to make impactful change. And you know what, like Sarah said, one person, one thing can make a huge difference. And so just continuing to be outspoken, to be advocates, to learn, to grow, to amplify the voices of others in our communities that might not necessarily have the platform, but have the experiences as well. I think that'll be incredibly important in the long run.
Rapid round, real quick. Answer as fast as you can, or else.
That was intimidating.
Yeah. Well, pandemic is over. What is the first thing that you're gonna do?
Go hug my grandma.
Oh, that's so cute. I was like, I'm off to Bali.
Carol Baskin or the Queen's Gambit?
Carol Baskin.
Carol Baskin.
Did Carol Baskin do it?
Yes.
Yeah, she did. Let's be honest.
Who's your dream foursome in golf?
Oh gosh. Michelle Obama, Beyonce, and I'd probably take my cousin Kia. She's a good time.
But the other ones aren't at all.
No.
No, leave them alone.
Erica?
I'm gonna go with The Rock, and Ed Sheeran.
Pre-game meal.
Really anything, but maybe salmon and rice.
Chicken and rice.
Ugh.
Pound for pound, Stittsville or the Hammer?
Oh, the Hammer, come on. Steel City.
If this wasn't virtual, you'd be going down.
Erica, favorite hockey team?
Team Canada.
Sarah, fave WWE wrestler?
Oh my gosh, that's taken me way back. Maybe like The Undertaker. Does he still wrestle?
He just retired. You didn't hear? It was big news. What gets the best performance out of you in a must-win game? Being the underdog or reigning champ?
Reigning champ.
Yeah, I'm going to forecast the future here and go reigning champ.
If you could have lunch with any of the Spice Girls, who would you choose?
Okay. I think Spice Girls was like a smidge before
You're too
me,
young.
but I would
Get her off the show. This isn't even
Like,
going to
I'm
be
super
aired
close.
now.
I'm super close, but you know what? Posh?
Okay,
I don't know.
That's me too. So
good,
you're
that's
fine.
good.
Okay, we're fine. Erica?
Like 12-year-old me would for sure go Baby Spice, but current me would probably go Ginger Halliwell.
Jerry Halliwell. Her first name was not Ginger. She was Ginger Spice.
God damn it.
Lost all credibility as a Spice Girls fan.
If I wasn't a wrestler or a hockey player, I'd be Sarah first.
Pop star.
An astronaut.
There's still time. Both of you.
This has been POV in studio. Thank you so much, Sarah and Erica. We appreciate you, and we appreciate you taking the time.
This has been Player's Own Voice in studio. And you know what? With one Olympics 6 months from now in Tokyo and another one in 12 months, we're going to have plenty to talk about. And we want to know what you want us to talk about. So let us know at any time.
Thanks for watching POV in studio. See you next time.